Welcome back, everyone, as we continue on in our 2005 Geoff Johns run of Green Lantern, issues 18 through 20. In our last video, we were introduced to Amon Sur, the son of Abin Sur, who we know is who Hal inherited his power ring from. We saw him get recruited into the Sinestro Corps, and we also saw a mysterious pink rock fall to Earth, which possessed some poor girl and killed her boyfriend, and now the possessed girl is searching out Hal. This arc, though, starts out from Carol Ferris's perspective. She's flying a plane and reminiscing about how the first time she met Hal, she was a little girl when she was about 7 years old, and it was also the day that Hal's father died. Her father, who owned Ferris Air, felt so guilty that over the years he started getting very sick, and Carol had to take over the company. Eventually, her and Hal fell in love and were together until Hal succumbed to parallax and ended up dying. So Carol moved on and married someone else. Or at least she thought she moved on. While she's thinking about this, though, a bright light appears in front of her that ends up crashing through her cockpit, and the star Sapphire abandons its current host mid-air to latch onto Carol, and actually in turn I think it kills that woman by leaving her on a stranded, broken plane. Plus she's naked, so it's a bit of a double whammy. Meanwhile, Hal is hanging out with Cowgirl on kind of a date, who now knows that Hal is the Green Lantern, when all of a sudden Carol, as the star Sapphire, crashes into the bar and catches Hal a bit off guard, but Cowgirl taunts star Sapphire Carol, saying that she was there first, which provides a bit of a distraction for a moment since the star Sapphire Carol can't help but let it be known that technically Carol was first and Cowgirl doesn't deserve him. By this time, though, Hal has had enough time to suit up and is able to get her away from the bar when the Rock senses some conflict in Hal and about who his heart truly desires and who it wants to be with. The star Sapphire ends up leaving Carol in favor of Cowgirl. Hal catches Carol to get her back to safety when she tells him that when the star Sapphire was connected to her, this time she was able to look back into the Sapphire and see where it comes from. Sector 1416, the Zamarons. She also mentions Sinestro when suddenly star Sapphire Cowgirl interrupts. Hal flies away and Carol asks how long they've been dating. Hal doesn't really want to say they were on a date, but just going out for drinks, though Carol kind of fires back that that is definitely what a date is. Hal points out that Carol got married even though he wasn't dead for very long. So I think the whole argument is kind of alluding to a bit of the residual tension between the two still. But Carol gets back on subject and tells Hal that there are more star sapphire crystals out there, and they're being used like that of the green and yellow power rings. This stumps Hal a little bit and asks, how do you even know about the yellow power ring? But she says that something through the connection with the sapphire allowed her to retain some of the memories and insight. She knows that there is some kind of war coming. Hal knows the story about how the Guardians were there at the origin of the universe and created the Book of Oa to police it. But there were actually others too. A tribe of women actually left Oa because they didn't agree with the Guardians' declaration to abandon all other emotions except will. For billions of years, they searched the universe for a power to rival that of the Guardians until they found it on a planet named Zamaron, between the bodies of Adam and Eve. A violet light. Not sure if this is the Adam and Eve referenced in the Bible, or if this is just saying that these were two of the first people on that particular planet. But the first time Carol had become a star sapphire, they didn't know what it was, but they knew it took complete control. Hal was able to get it off, fortunately, but the crystal would come back, choosing someone else he desired. Every time, Hal was able to get it off, but some other Green Lanterns were not so lucky. On the planet Xandor, another Green Lantern mated with his wife as a star sapphire, and just afterwards she killed him, which I guess there could be worse ways to go, but then the crystal invaded all living things on the planet, and the crystals started to grow everywhere, encasing everything in a crystal. Eventually, they encased the entire planet in an effort to protect it. You see, the Zamarons' idea of love is actually a complete control and encasing everything in a crystallized shell to protect itself. So their view of love is actually pretty twisted and wouldn't necessarily be what you or I think the power of love would do. Star Sapphire Cowgirl catches up with them though and crashes them through a building. As Star Sapphire and Hal are pinned, Carol hits her in the back of the head and tells Hal to make a suit for her to fight Star Sapphire. She knows what the crystal is thinking, so she understands how to beat it. They end up getting her pinned to the ground, and Carol totally isn't jealous or anything, but she does ask if she can just hit her one more time. Carol then goes to tell Hal something, but just before she can spit it out, a high energy signature blasts open through a portal, revealing the aliens responsible for the Star Sapphire, the Zamarons. The Zamarons start attacking Hal, so he tells Carol to try to get that crystal off of Cowgirl's head. Carol is able to pry it free, leaving them both naked, so she gives Cowgirl a shirt when they turn around to see Hal was pinned down by the Zamarons. They run out to help him, but the Zamarons freeze them with the power of the crystal and ask him to choose which mate he wants. In a bit of a clever twist though, he says, "You want me to choose? No problem, I choose you," and ends up kissing the Zamaron leader, so the Star Sapphire says, "You know what, whatever, okay by me," and goes to latch onto that woman, turning her into a Star Sapphire, and starting to take control and gain immense power as this is an immortal being. The other Zamarons know that they have to get that rock off of their leader, but they can't do it from Earth, so they whip up another portal and head back to where they came from, telling Hal he doesn't understand the consequences for not allowing them to encase Earth in a crystal because of the war that's coming for them all. Hal, Carol, and Cowgirl all go back to a bar which has now been partly destroyed to order a drink and chill out. And Hal says that Selak is definitely going to need to send a unit to Zamaron to follow up and try to get the Guardians involved. Carol starts to feel a bit like a third wheel and heads out, though Hal doesn't really want her to go. Cowgirl asks if it was something she said, but Hal says not to worry about it and asks if she'd be up for a second date. Later, Hal goes back to visit his mechanic friend Tom and also check in on Carol. When talking to Tom though, Tom lets him know that Carol's been a lot happier since she's gotten divorced, which immediately catches Hal's attention, so maybe he also hasn't completely moved on. Epilogue. Back on Zamaron, the aliens are able to get the rock off of their leader, and note that the further away from the emotional spectrum, the greater the influence it has over the bearer. Now that they've witnessed firsthand what it can do, they start to concede that maybe Hal was right. It's time to take a new approach, or perhaps it's more of an old approach. A page right out of the Book of Oa, a power ring with its own central power battery. They also note that in order to combat the coming war, that unlike the Guardians, they need emotions. And though they promote love the most, they need them all. And we can see here that they've actually already collected 3 of them. But that's going to wrap up the Star Sapphire arc, and as we can tell, different emotions are starting to get their own core organized. This story wasn't bad, but the art style is not my favorite because to me, it makes Hal look like a college-aged frat boy. Next up, we are going to get into our first major arc with the Sinestro Corps Wars, which I am really excited for because it is a great arc, so stay tuned for that. I'm Keeks, and I will catch you all next time for some more Green Lantern content.